Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, so let's start with JSON generator class. See, so far what we have seen was like, what is the JSON format? What is the purpose? What is the significance of a JSON format? Then how the JSON format looks like to be if your data, if you wanted to represent a particular value, maybe a numerical value, maybe a string value, maybe the records of an array, or maybe the records of an object. So how exactly that looks like to be that we already have seen in the last sessions. Now, I have told you that whenever we would perform, the process of serialization. Now, what does it means by the serialization? So, if for example, if you have like Salesforce, you have Salesforce in one end, and then you have any third-party system on the other. These are two different systems based on two separate technologies. And we wanted to transfer certain parameters from Salesforce to that third-party system. So we wanted to transfer certain parameters from the Salesforce to the third-party system. But because these two systems are built up on two separate technologies, they follow a pattern which obviously is different between among them. Like if we talk about Salesforce, Salesforce is completely built up like, the entire coding of the Salesforce is completely being done with a language called as an Apex language. All of the server-side controllers, typically, whatever you would be creating, you are also learning Lightnings, but the Lightning page and the JavaScript what you are creating is typically called as client-side controller, because everything what you have written inside in JavaScript that basically runs on the browser level, it does not goes to force.com platform. But whenever you are interacting with the objects of the Salesforce, that typically requires you to write down a code that would interact with the runtime engine, that would interact with the Apex runtime engine. So typically we always write down Apex controller in every case, even though if you are creating a Visual Force page. So for the Visual Force page as well, the backend is an Apex controller. So if you would think a little bit on this, you would realize that there is no exception to Apex. There is no exception to Apex. If you wanted to do something inside in Salesforce, you should know the Apex program, right? You should know the Apex program. Anyways, that's a separate story. That's a separate topic of discussion. Let's not deviate. Let's come back to what we are learning, what we are discussing right now. So on the one hand, we have a Salesforce organization, which the programs, the parameters which we have written is in Apex program. And let's say the data which is we wanted to transfer, that is a data of some S object. That is a data of some S object, right? It may be an account object or something else, right? Now, this third-party system typically is built upon Java. This third-party system is typically built upon, let's say, Java. Now, because these are two distinguished systems, but still we wanted to carry out this integration and we wanted to transfer certain records of the Salesforce to this third-party system. How we are going to achieve this? That is what is all about integration, right? That is what it is all about, integrations. So what we are going to do would be like, we would be converting that S object record into a JSON format. We would be converting that S object record into JSON format. We would be converting that S object record into JSON format. And after converting it in the form of JSON, that S object record needs to be get converted into JSON format. And after getting it converted into JSON, it can be transferred. It can be transferred to the third-party system. So when we say like we are about to convert an S object record, we are about to convert an S object record into JSON. We are about to convert an S object record into JSON. This process is called a serialization. This process is called a serialization. We would also be going to learn the vice versa pattern of this. We would also be going to learn the reverse expression of this, converting JSON into S object. Well, that is called as deserialization, but that would be covered in a separate session. Now, what we are going to study, that I'm describing you the same. The process of serialization. The process of serialization. What does it mean by serialization? Converting S object record into the JSON format. Converting an S object record, any record of S object, any record of Salesforce object, any standard object, any custom object, any record of object, one record, multiple records, whatever it is. But converting an S object record into the JSON format, this process is called as serialization. This process is called as serialization. Now, to perform this serialization, do we require to write down a custom code? Well, a little bit of that. But then Salesforce has provided you one class. Salesforce has provided you one class. There is one standard class for this. There is one standard class for this. And that class is JSON generator class. This one. JSON generator class. To perform the serialization, to perform the conversion of S object record into a JSON format, to convert the Salesforce object records into JSON, there is one standard class which is available, and that class name is JSON generator. JSON generator. So this is what we are going to do. I have told this a lot many times that Apex is not that much difficult. What do you think it has been? Apex programming, if you would closely observe this, and you yourself would going to realize this down the time, not now, maybe because right now you are just have started learning the Apex, so maybe two of us would going to have a cross opinion. You may be end up on a certain different point. I am on a certain different opinion. But down the time, somewhere in the time, you would yourself would going to realize that Apex is not that much difficult. Because most of the things, most of what it is required, there is a standard class for that. You just have to understand what are the different methods of that and how I can, how I can use those methods inside in my program and build up a custom logic accordingly. राइट. सो चलो, आज नहीं तो कल, कल नहीं तो फिर कभी, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं आपको भी ये एहसास होगा इस चीज का कि एप्रोच इतना भी टफ नहीं है एज कम्पेयर टू, पर्टिकुलरली अगर देखिए, अगर आपको किसी और लैंग्वेज का नॉलेज है, तब इस बात का आपको बहुत जल्द, मतलब आप ये चीज बहुत जल्दी रियलाइज करो. जैसे मैंने 2-3 प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेजेस पढ़ रखी हैं, मतलब कुछ उस वक्त पढ़ी जब ग्रेजुएशन कर रहा था, कुछ उसके बाद पढ़ा. जावा, मैंने पर्टिकुलरली जावा जावा सर्टिफाइड प्रोफेशनल हूँ मैं, मतलब एक दौर का. जब ग्रेजुएशन किया उसके बाद में सीडैक कंप्लीट किया, तो जावा फिर मैंने करीब करीब 1.5 से 2 साल जावा में काम किया. तो इसलिए मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम, मतलब मैं जब कोई कंपैरिजन करता हूँ तो जावा के साथ करता हूँ, बिकॉज वो एक वक्त में एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट हुआ करता था, एरिया ऑफ एक्सपर्टाइजेशन हुआ करता था, है ना. तो कंपैरेटिवली जब मैं इसको देखता हूँ तो मैं हमको रियलाइज होता है कि देखिए, इस चीज के लिए वी यूज टू बिल्ड अप अ कस्टम लॉजिक ओवर देयर. द एंटायर कोडिंग वाज प्योरली वी हैव टू क्रिएट, एंड इवन दो इफ यू मिस अप अ सिंगल थिंग इनटू दैट, द होल लॉजिक, द होल लॉजिक स्टार्ट्स टू बी डाउन द ग्राउंड. बेसिकली ये फर्क है, एपेक्स में और जावा और दूसरी प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेजेस में. तो एपेक्स में काफी सारी चीजें जो है ना, वो रेडीमेडली अवेलेबल. हमको बस क्या सीखना है. The only thing what we have to learn is like how we can use those methods, how we can use that class and take, particularly inherit that functionality, because that functionality is already being created. We just have to understand like how we can inherit that into our custom logics. राइट. चलिए, तो एक क्लास हमारे पास पहले से मौजूद है जिसका नाम है जेसन जनरेटर क्लास. अब इस क्लास में जो मेथड्स अवेलेबल हैं, लेट्स ट्राई टू सी, लेट्स हैव लुक ऑन टू देम. सबसे पहला जो है वो स्टार्ट ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट एंड देन एंड ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट. नाउ I'll do one thing, I'll just write down a small snip so that we could compare this. So see, I have told you like every JSON, always starts and ends with a curly bracket, isn't it? Every JSON always starts and ends with a curly bracket. And let's say if you, the first thing which we always represent is the key name. For example, the key name is customer data. Okay, customer data. Then there is always a colon. Then there is always a colon. And now let's say we have multiple values. We have multiple values. We have multiple values, but of the same data type. Whenever there are multiple values of the same data type, you have to enclose them within this square bracket, right? Within this square bracket. This is what we just have studied, right? And for example, let's say customer data, the very first entity is name. So name, because that's an string that has to be enclosed like this, name, and name is, let's say, cousin. And then we have the next entity is, again, it's always going to be a string. Keys are always string, remember. Even of course over here as well, I'll have to write it down like this, right? Keys are always string and they are always enclosed within double inverted comma. Then let's say is date of birth, date of birth. And because that date of birth, we would representing them in a string. So that would be something like this, 10/02, 1982. And then let's say the next entity would be like phone, right? Phone. And because phone, we are representing, let's say we are representing them in number, not in the text. So I can give it directly. I can give it directly, right? I can give it directly, something like this. Now see, this is just a JSON. If, for example, if I would be having multiple data, there's not just one customer record. So if there are multiple records, you have to represent it like this. Then again, you'll have to open a curly bracket, right? One curly bracket represents one record. And then once that record has been finished, you have to close this, put up a comma over here, right? Put up a comma, and then followed to this, you could have the next record. You could have the next record. You could have the next record. Isn't it? So basically what I wanted you to understand, this is what is a format, a JSON format, what we have studied. Now, accordingly, I wanted you to understand a few of the things around here. Accordingly, I wanted, yeah. So I wanted you to understand a few of the things out of this context, right? There is yeah. So there's a method called as write start object, a write start object. Fine. Wherever you wanted to put an opening curly bracket, wherever you wanted to put an opening curly bracket, wherever you wanted to put an opening curly bracket, the opening curly brackets are always written with a method called as write start object. Write start object. Then obviously, what does it means by write end object? You can simply assume that wherever you wanted to put a closing curly bracket, wherever you wanted to put up a closing curly bracket, wherever you wanted to put up a closing curly bracket, that closing curly bracket is put, that curly bracket has been written, that closing curly bracket is written with write end object. So write start object and write end object, they are basically used to define opening and closing curly brackets respectively. Understood? Now, write start array, wherever you wanted to put up an opening square bracket, and write end array wherever you wanted to put up an closing end array, a closing square bracket. So that time we would going to make a use of start array and end array. So I'm just trying to make you explain, I'm just trying to explain you about what are the methods. Then write field name, field name. I just have written that, unfortunately that was being vanished. Anyways, but see, the first entity is always a key name and followed by the value. So wherever you wanted to write down the key name, you have to use a method called as write field name. Write field name. Wherever you wanted to write down number, if the value is a number, you wanted to write it down. Write number. Right, write number. This is used for writing a number. अच्छा, एक चीज और, अभी आई एम जस्ट एक्सप्लेनिंग, अभी जो है मैं इसको थोड़ा सा स्पीड में ले रहा हूँ, because what I personally believe Here, lot of explanation is not required. Even though if I would try to, maybe if I would explain this you for next like half an hour, still this concept would be going to be get clear more when we actually jot it down in the program. When we actually use these methods inside in the program, उस वक्त ये ज्यादा clear हो. So I'm just trying to give you a small brief idea. अरे ये देखो ये एक method है जिसका ये काम रहने वाला है. But how exactly it is going to be used, we're going to see this in the program. And that is the best way to understand this. Right? ठीक है, चलिए. So a right number is used to write down the numbers when your value is a number. Then there is right string. Right string is obviously for string. Right boolean is obviously for boolean. If you don't have any values, there is like a right null when it is not number, when it is not a string. If there is no value for a particular field, एंड यू नो दिस, ऐसा जरूरी थोड़ी ना होता है कि हमको हर बार हर ऑब्जेक्ट में हर फील्ड के लिए रिकॉर्ड्स डालने की जरूरत पड़ती है. इफ यू वुड सी एंड रिकॉर्ड, देयर माइट बी सो मेनी फील्ड्स, there might be so many fields for which there is no records is being there. So for example, if there is a field which does not have any value, and but you wanted to convert that into JSON, but let's say this trigger symbol. Now this trigger symbol is ticker symbol, sorry, is a field that does not have any value. It neither have a string value nor it have a number value. And how I'm going to represent that into JSON? So there is a function for that, write null, when there is no value, right? Write null. Then write date is for date, write date is for date. All right, चलो. अब ये तो कुछ बेसिक फंक्शंस हो गए, ये तो कुछ बेसिक फंक्शंस हो गए. More importantly, we would be going to use write string field, write number. I mean, instead of, मैं क्यों ऐसा बोल रहा हूँ आप समझेंगे. write string ना use करते हुए, I'm not going to use write string. Instead of using this, in replacement of write string, inside in the program, I would going to use write string field. और मैं ऐसा क्यों कर रहा हूँ, you're going to learn that. With the very first program, probably you're going to see the differences and you would going to realize कि यार अपने को इसके बजाय ये यूज करना चाहिए. तो मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ आपसे कि भाई राइट स्ट्रिंग जो है, दिस इज यूज टू राइट डाउन अ स्ट्रिंग वैल्यू, बट इसको यूज ना करते हुए रादर आई वुड बी यूजिंग राइट स्ट्रिंग के बजाय मैं राइट स्ट्रिंग फील्ड यूज करूं. और ऐसा क्यों करेंगे हम, तो आप समझ जाएंगे, डोंट वरी. राइट नंबर एक मेथड है जो नंबर को डिफाइन करती है, लेकिन राइट नंबर ना लेते हुए हम लोग लेंगे राइट नंबर फील्ड. राइट स्ट्रिंग ना लेते हुए राइट स्ट्रिंग फील्ड यूज करेंगे. राइट नंबर ना लेते हुए राइट नंबर फील्ड यूज करेंगे. राइट बुलियन ना लेते हुए राइट बुलियन फील्ड यूज करेंगे. राइट डेट ना यूज करते हुए राइट डेट फील्ड यूज करेंगे. राइट डेट टाइम ना यूज करते हुए राइट डेट टाइम फील्ड यूज करेंगे. तो ये फील्ड 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 हर जगह, जैसे राइट बुलियन, लेकिन राइट बुलियन ना यूज करते हुए राइट बुलियन फील्ड. राइट नंबर ना यूज करते हुए राइट नंबर फील्ड. राइट स्ट्रिंग ना यूज करते हुए राइट स्ट्रिंग फील्ड. अब इसका क्या बेनिफिट है, दो तरह की मेथड्स हैं, क्या बेनिफिट है, दैट वी आर गोइंग टू सी इन द प्रोग्राम, that we are going to see in the program. All right, let's do with this. So we have this, let me take this first program. So we have a data, a raw data, and we wanted to create a JSON for this one. We wanted to create a JSON. So the field names, as you can see, is like the first name with this value, and these all are the fields. Now this belongs to which object? Let's not talk on that. राइट, ठीक है. एक रॉ डेटा है, एक रॉ एग्जांपल है, एंड आफ्टर दैट उसके बाद में फिर मैं आपको ऑब्जेक्ट लेवल पे लेके जाऊंगा. अभी आई जस्ट वांटेड यू टू हैव एन आइडिया अबाउट ऑल दीज मेथड्स. ये जो मेथड्स आपने देखा जेसन जनरेटर क्लास का, उसको एक बार थोड़ा सा आप देख लें, उससे इंट्रोड्यूस हो जाएं, उसके बाद में फिर मैं ऑब्जेक्ट लेवल पे लेके चलता हूँ ग्रेजुअली. ठीक है. सो अभी हमारे पास, लेट्स कंसीडर वी हैव दिस apex data. Let's consider this is a record of certain object, maybe a contact or account or any other custom object. ठीक है. For an instance, let's try to understand. Let's assume that this is a data of a particular object and we wanted to convert this into JSON. By the way, इसका आउटपुट क्या रहेगा वो अगर आप देखें, अगर आप इसको मैनुअली क्रिएट कर रहे होते, तो यू नो दैट जेसन ऑलवेज स्टार्ट्स एंड एंड्स विद कर्ली ब्रैकेट. देन ऑल दीज, लाइक द फर्स्ट नेम, द लास्ट नेम एंड ऑल, दे आर की नेम, दे आर फील्ड नेम, दे आर की नेम, दे आर फील्ड नेम. They are always enclosed, they are always going to be get enclosed within double inverted comma. Now depending upon the value, If it's a string value, if it's a string value, that is going to be given like this. If it's a number value, this annual revenue is a number value. Annual revenue is a number value. So it can be given directly. It can be given directly. ये इसका आउटपुट रहने वाला है. ये एक raw data है that we wanted to convert in JSON format. That we wanted to convert in the JSON. But इसके पहले कि हम convert करें, हमने मैनुअली उसका आउटपुट निकाल के पहले से अपने पास रख लिया ताकि हम क्रॉस वेरीफाई करें कि जब हम एक प्रोग्राम लिखने वाले हैं and inside in that program we are going to use the methods of this JSON generator class और उस methods को use करके we would be going to create this, right? We would be going to create this. चलिए हम देखते हैं कैसे करते हैं. So I would be creating a new class called as JSON generator helper class. Let's go to the Salesforce and let's go to developer. So I would switch back to classic because in the integrations we are going to require to see the front end in the Visual Force programming. But for the Visual Force programming, you must be inside in the classic. Anyway, so let me clear out this window. And I would be creating a new Apex class with the name JSON Generator Helper class. JSON Generator Helper class. All right. Sure. Now, before I actually, or we can simultaneously see that. No problem. We can simultaneously see that. See, I would be creating a method inside this. First of all, public, static, and then void. Create JSON content. So this is a method. Try always to give the significant names to your classes and your methods. Now, so what we wanted to do, we wanted to create the JSON for what? There is a data. This is one of that raw data, and for this particular data, we wanted to convert this data into the JSON form, right? Who is going to do that? Who is going to convert? Are we going to represent this manually? No. Do we have any standard class which can convert any data into JSON? Yes. What is the name of that class? JSON generator class. What does JSON generator class will do? JSON generator class can convert a raw data into JSON format. So when you wanted to take the advantages, there are certain methods of that. All these are the methods. All these are the methods that we wanted to be used, right? There are a lot many methods, not just 15. I have represented 15 does not mean there are only 15. There may be a few more methods inside JSON generator class. So this is a class, JSON generator is a class which is capable to convert a raw data into JSON. And for that, it have multiple methods inside this. So we have to wisely select which method suits for our requirement. But I would ask you one question. If you wanted to use the methods or the variables, or rather member, when I say member of a class, it typically means all of the methods of that class, all of the variables which you have defined inside the class. How you can explore, how you can call a member of a class. Yes. Any one of you wanted to answer this question? How would you use, how would you call, how would you invoke the members of a class? That's a pretty simple thing, I guess. You should know the answer. Anybody wanted to take this chance? That was a very simple question. That was a very simple question. Let's say I would try to make it more simple for you. Let's say I wanted to use a method called write string field. Inside in my program, I am writing a program over here. I wanted to use a method called writeStringField, but that method is not of this class. Rather, that method belongs to a class called JSON generator. How would you use any member? That was a pretty simple question. Very good, guys. So, if you wanted to use any member, if you wanted to call, if you wanted to invoke any member of a class, whether that member is a method or else if that member is a variable that is being defined inside in that class, if you wanted to invoke any member of a class, you first of all would require to create an object of that class. Without creating an object, you cannot refer the members of the classes. You cannot refer the members of the classes, right? So this is what is an object-oriented principle, by the way. Apex is fully an object-oriented language. It follows each and every principle of object-oriented. Anyways, so I wanted to use so many different methods of JSON generator class because I have a raw data which I wanted to get represented in the form of JSON. But for doing that, for utilizing those methods, I first of all would require to create an object of JSON generator class. And there is a fixed format of how you are going, because that's a system class. It's not your custom class. For example, if it would be a custom class, agar wo ek custom class hoti, I can use it, I can do it like this. Very simple. जैसे आप JSON generator helper, ये आपकी custom class है ना? That equals to कोई भी दो JSON obj नाम का object बनाया and then new. So now this is like how you create an object of your custom classes. भाई ये JSON generator class जो है, JSON generator helper नाम की class है, it's a custom class, ये आपने बनाई। उसका अगर आपने ऑब्जेक्ट बनाना है तो ये तरीका, ये पैटर्न हम फॉलो करते हैं। Name of the class, name of the object, new keyword, again name of the class but as a default constructor. Now this, from this onward, this ये जो आपने लिखा JSON obj, that becomes an object of this class, a representative of this class. Now whatever the methods and variable, if you have any inside in this class, you can use them with this name. And how we usually do that, अब यहाँ पे ये तो खैर अपने static void कर रखा है, but अगर ये method void नहीं होती, बात static method नहीं होती, तो आप इसको इस तरह से कॉल कर रहे होते थे। you know this everything, and I don't know why you guys don't answer, otherwise आपको मैंने सारी चीजें पढ़ा रखी हैं, सारी चीजें, ऐसी कोई चीज नहीं है जो आपको छुपाई है, आपको नहीं बताई गई है। आप लोग पढ़ाई नहीं कर रहे हैं शायद, या बहुत पीछे चल रहे हैं। मतलब मैं इंटीग्रेशन खत्म कर रहा हूँ, आप डेवलपमेंट भी नहीं खत्म कर पा रहे, तो मे बी आप लोग काफी पीछे चल रहे हैं। आई एम नॉट श्योर व्हाई, बट नो वन इज एबल टू आंसर दिस वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन। इस तरह से हम एक क्लास को, एक मेथड को कॉल करते हैं, बट वो ये जो चीज है, दिस इज एप्लीकेबल विद द कस्टम क्लासेस जो आपने क्रिएट कर रखी। व्हाट अबाउट द स्टैंडर्ड वन? स्टैंडर्ड वन तुमने बैच क्लासेस बनाई, बैच क्लासेस बनाई। टॉपिक डेविएट हो रहा है, बट क्या करूं, आप लोग आंसर नहीं देते हैं तो मुझे पढ़ाना तो पड़ेगा ना। अगर आप लोग बता देते तो शायद मुझे, अभी मैं ये कोड लिख रहा होता था, लेकिन स्किप नहीं कर सकते। यू मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड द डिफरेंस बिटवीन how to invoke the methods inside a custom class and how to invoke the methods of a standard class. You must understand that difference. You must realize that difference. कस्टम का तो आपने देख लिया, अगर आप एक क्लास क्रिएट करते हो, दैट्स योर क्लास, उसको किस तरह से बनाया जाता है। न्यू कीवर्ड के साथ आपको डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर बनाना पड़ता है, and whatever the object name you have given, from that onward you can use, you can create as many number of the object, because object is just a temporary memory. ऐसा कोई रूल नहीं है कि आप एक क्लास के लिए एक ही ऑब्जेक्ट बनाओ, ऐसा कोई रूल नहीं। You can create as many number of as objects you wanted, that is required inside in your logic, because that is just a temporary method, and the scope is till the time of execution of the class. जो मेथड आप एग्जीक्यूट कर रहे हो तब तक ही उसका स्कोप है, उसके बाद में ऑब्जेक्ट इज वैनिश्ड, टेम्पररी मेमोरी में स्टोर होता है सारी चीजें, हीप मेमोरी में, उसके बाद उसका कोई स्कोप नहीं। And how much heap memory we usually have for a running of a program? 6 megabytes, 6 MB. For a particular batch program, it is 12 MB. For a normal program, it is 6 MB. Anyways, understand the differences between creating an object for a custom class and creating of an object for a standard class. आपने custom देख लिया, अब standard आपको याद होगा. हमने batch classes की, batch classes बनाई है. Batch classes they invoke, they implement an interfaces. जब तक आप वो implement नहीं करते हो, तब तक वो क्लास बैच क्लास नहीं बनती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपने एक बैच क्लास बनाया, उसको नाम दिया आपने कुछ तो भी. इट मस्ट implement, what does it implement? Database dot batchable. If you won't write down this keyword database dot batchable, that class does not becomes a batch class. So you compulsory would have to you compulsory would have to add this interface. You compulsory would require to decorate it with that decorator. What is that decorator? Database dot batchable. For a schedulable class, system dot schedulable, system dot queuable for a queuable. So these are certain decorators you would have to include inside in your program. Now, how would you invoke a batch class? Do we follow the same pattern? No, no. There is a method called database dot execute method. But even if that method, you first of all would require to create. For example, you have a batch class, my batch. फिर उसके बाद में आप एक ऑब्जेक्ट बनाते हो mb equals to new my batch, isn't it? आप ऐसा करते हो. And then database dot batchable, database dot batchable, then you give that name mb. अगर आपको बैच साइज देना है तो बैच साइज इस तरह से. So it has a known pattern. ये database dot batchable क्या is a known pattern. If you wanted to invoke the method, because batch classes typically have three methods: start, execute, finish. You cannot call individually start method, execute और finish को आप individually नहीं कर सकते. It has to follow a pattern. Every processing of batch must always begin from the start method. तो आपके लिए एक known pattern दिया गया, database dot batchable. How would you push the job when you are using a queuable interface? How would you push the job into Apex Queue? System.enqueue job. You have this a method, there's a standard method. So, you know, you should know this all. You should know this all. You should understand the differences. You should understand the differences. That if I am invoking a standard class, else if I am invoking a custom class, there's a difference. For custom, it's very simple. And I was asking that, मैं वो पूछ रहा था. So I was expecting कि आप में से कोई ना कोई जरूर आंसर दे देगा. Because that was pretty simple thing. And it has been repeated so many number of the times. कुछ नहीं तो फिर मैंने ये तो जरूर पढ़ा रखा है कि what is the benefit of making a method as a static method? What is the benefit of making, if for example I wanted to invoke this method, what is the benefit of making a method as a static method? Static methods can be invoked directly just by giving name of the class followed by the name of the method. This is what is the benefit of making a method as a static method. There is one step which is omitted. What is that? You don't require to create object of this class to invoke this method. You don't require to create the object of this class to invoke this method. Otherwise, what is the general rule? Every member of a class, whether it's a method or whether it's a variable, if you wanted to invoke, you first of all would require to create an object of the class. अगर यहाँ कोई वेरिएबल डिफाइन करूंगा तो उसको इन्वोक करने के लिए मुझे 100% उसका वो ये बनाना पड़ेगा, मुझे ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा. But if it's a static variable, but if it's a static method like this, you can call them directly. This is what is the benefit, and that's why every method, whatever we create so far, was a static method. तो बहुत सिंपल चीज पूछ रहा था मैं, मेरे हिसाब से ऐसा कुछ नहीं था कि इसका आंसर नहीं दे सकते थे. आप पढ़ाई नहीं कर रहे हैं. Anyways, I don't think I can complete this within 10 or 20 minutes because I would require a lot of explanation. But this is the first program. This is the first program. So we would continue this by tomorrow. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions? And guys, please, please